Hello everybody, I'm Sinué Montoya with DroneQuote.
And I'm John Case with Realty Corp.
And today we're going to be talking to you about buying and selling a home with solar. And for that, we have an expert here, as John mentioned, with Duomo Realty, who is going to shine a little bit more light as to what it's like to sell a home with solar and what it's like to buy a home with solar. So John, help the viewer and myself understand, how common is it that you're dealing with a home that actually does have solar on the property?
Well, Sinué, solar has become, as you were saying earlier, much more prevalent. So at the beginning of my career, this was something that was relatively new. A lot of folks were kind of experimenting with it. But since that time, with the technology getting more efficient, with the government providing incentives, and with the price of electricity going up, we started to see this system become more and more prevalent to the point where nowadays, some of the homes that we do sell are fully equipped with solar. It's becoming much, much more prevalent.
Do you think it'll ever get to the point where it'll take away from the home if it doesn't have solar?
I do. As a matter of fact, I believe there's legislation in place that's moving toward new construction coming with solar. A lot of the new construction we see already has solar incorporated with it. So as a result, it is something that folks are becoming acclimated to. They're becoming accustomed to seeing it. And so as we begin to progress more and more in that direction, a home without solar may stand out in that instance. Whereas before, a home with solar stood out because it was something new. The reverse might take place in the future, as a home without solar may be something of an oddity as it becomes more and more prevalent.
So John, as you help people buy and sell a home that has solar on it, what are some things that a homeowner should be mindful of in regards to having that solar on the roof when they go to sell or when the buyer goes to look at a property purchase?
Okay, so there's two different components. It depends very much on which side of the transaction you're on. When you're on the listing side, as a listing agent, the person selling the home, one of the key things that I want to find out is how the system was acquired. Is it a lease? Is it completely paid off? Is it a system that is being paid off? Or is it something where the solar company is leasing the roof space from the homeowner? As you can see, there are multiple scenarios that can play out. That's vital information, because that is information that we're going to pass along to the buyer to help them make the determination as to whether or not to submit their offer and hopefully purchase the home. From the buyer's side, those are all information that I'm, as a buyer's agent, asking for. Like, hey guys, what system is in place? Is my client have to assume it? Does he have to buy it out? How is it going to work? Is the seller going to be paying for it to be bought out, and the price going to be included in the price of the home? These are all factors that, as a buyer's agent, I want to have a key understanding on, because, for example, in the circumstances where the property is leased on the home, my client may have to qualify for that. That's another factor that has to be factored into the overall purchase. The lender has to be notified of these things. The buyer actually has to go through a process of qualifying like any other credit situation. So that's time consuming, and also it could jeopardize your deal. This is not something you want to be finding out in the middle of the transaction. This is key information you want to have at the beginning so that you can be empowered to make the best decision for your client. So, Sinué, does it really matter who does the installation? Isn't just all solar pretty much the same?
So that's a really good question, because you can easily think that all solar is the same because the panels all look the same and they all do very similar, if not the same thing, right? There are companies that have been in business for a short period of time, sell as many installations as possible, and then they go out of business. And with those installations are supposed to come warranties. And those warranties usually last 10 plus years for the workmanship. Okay. And you have a workmanship warranty that is a 10-year warranty, and the company goes out of business. It starts raining, your roof starts leaking. Who do you turn to for that? Now you have to call a roofer. It's going to come out of pocket. You're going to be paying for that, or the new homeowner is going to be paying for that. So you have to be very mindful of the company that installed the system when you're buying a home, because you want to make sure that you are also getting the warranties that you're probably going to be charged for if they're saying that solar is going to increase the cost of the value of the home.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, as a homeowner trying to make this decision, vetting out the company that I'm working with is very, very important. Trying to find out who I'm going to be working with, and kind of longevity in the overall system, how long they've been around, things of that nature in making my decision.
Absolutely. That's due diligence that you definitely want to undertake.
Fantastic. So Sinué, it sounds like who you work with is important. Obviously, a reputable company that's been around will honor their warranties. Are the systems that these companies all utilize the same? Are they different? What sets them apart?
So in a sense, they are the same because they're going to be doing the same thing, producing electricity, right? The capacity of the system start to differ, but really the biggest thing that you want to look out for is the size of the system and how much power it's going to put out.
So size matters.
Size matters.
So Sinuhe, what are we looking at here?
So there's critical components for making solar work here. The first one is an inverter. That's the white box. And the inverter, what it does is it converts the sunlight into usable electricity, also known as DC to AC. But what people really care about is, can I use the sunlight for electricity? That's what that inverter does. This battery here, a battery, it stores electricity. So that as the electricity is being produced, if it's not sent back to the grid, then it goes into this battery for later use.
Okay, so you mentioned going back to the grid. What is net metering and how does that play a role into this whole system?
So net metering is a system that the utility company has in order for the electricity to be converted into monetary credits. And why that's important, especially in today's world, and you should know this as a realtor, to use to your client's advantage, is the newer versions of net metering fall into what's called a time of use rate. And that's important because if you're producing power in the early time of the day, say you have an east-facing roof, you're going to be producing power from sun up to about 1 o'clock. But when do rates go up?
In the afternoon and into the day.
Right. They go up in the latter part of the day, and sometimes they go up by more than, double the price. So now in the afternoon hours, even though you have solar, you were producing power at, let's say, 20 cents a kilowatt hour. And you were getting 20 cents a kilowatt hour because you were feeding it to the grid. But you're now pulling power at 40 cents a kilowatt hour in the afternoon hours. Now those numbers are just examples, but it gives you an illustration of how those rates are different in different parts of the day. A battery is nice because what happens is if you don't have a west-facing roof, you could store all that power that would otherwise go back to the grid at 20 cents a watt and pull it from your battery without paying SDG&E those 40 cents a watt later in the day.
Understood, okay.
Your installation date has a lot to do with that net metering version. The best version of net metering is the first version. And that ended right around the 2016 timeframe. So if you come across a home that has solar installed on it from 2016 and earlier, that home is more likely to have the earlier version of net metering. And that's very important because then it doesn't matter when you're producing power. And that's a higher value version of net metering that homeowners typically don't know to share with a realtor. Another thing to know about net metering that is important is it stays with the home. So if you sell your home today, I buy your home from you, net metering now belongs to me. So you can pass it on to the next homeowner. And it's also grandfathered. It's grandfathered for a period of 20 years from the time of installation. So John, as you've had the experience of working with homeowners that are buying or selling with solar, what kinds of experiences or challenges have you come across that either made it easy or made it difficult to transfer that property that has solar on it?
Okay, well, as we stated before, probably the key piece of information that I'm looking for is who we're going to be working with, because that company can then give me the procedures to follow to help transfer the system if it's going to be transferable. So the key thing to understand is it bought or is it leased? And then if it's leased, what type of lease it is. There are some systems that are transferable, so the new purchaser can actually transfer the system from the homeowner's name to their name. There are other systems that will not allow you to do that. They'll require you that it be bought out. So if it is a transferable system, then we actually have to qualify our buyer. As we stated before, this is going to be another assumed debt that the buyer's taking on, which means that in the overall financing, that has to be factored in. So one of the key things we want to find out is what is going to be the cost, what is going to be the overall expense that's going to be factored in, and see how that works into their overall budget. And it could significantly affect it because if your buyer's already at the top of their range, adding another couple $100 a month may actually not allow the deal to go through. That's why we need this information as early as possible in the process. That way we can make the determination, does our buyer really qualify for the system, and are they able to assume it? Because there's the second component, which is the credit. It's like any other type of credit situation, your buyer's gonna have to qualify. We're assuming that the borrower has good credit as they're getting financing, but the solar company might have a higher standard, for example, for what they're looking for as far as credit worthiness. That has to be met by the buyer as well.
John, as I understand you, it sounds like a wholly owned system that's fully paid for is the best case scenario.
It is. So that is probably the easiest way to do it. You can incorporate the system into your overall price, and then when you sell the home, you sell it as a wholly owned package. There's no additional steps the homeowner owns the seller and they just transfer it over to the new buyer when they purchase the home. However, that doesn't mean that somebody who has a lease system can't qualify for one. You have the ability to just go through the proper steps, find out who you're working with, see if your borrower qualifies, and then they can assume the solar themselves. So it's one of those situations where whether it's bought or leased, you still have the ability to purchase the home. You just have to make sure that you're qualified to do so.
John, I've come to believe that solar will have a positive impact on the value of the home. However, I've never sold a home in my life. And you being the professional, would you shine a little bit more light on that?
Absolutely. So this is a little bit of a complicated question in the sense that it really comes down to the eye of the beholder. I do believe that solar adds value. How much value will really come down to like an individual case-by-case basis. In situations where you have a large home, you talk about multiple thousands of square feet, you have kids, you have multiple devices. When I'm talking about, your router, your television, your computers, a vehicle, a lot of people forget about the vehicles. In situations like that, that can really add a lot of value because most of the folks that will be utilizing those devices will be home during peak hours when you're getting charged the most. So in that type of situation, the solar can really offset some of those costs. On top of that, that's a value that you can then pass on to the next buyer, explaining to them how the system works and the full benefit that you got out of it. So it's one of those situations where overall, in my opinion, I do believe that it adds value to the overall sale of the home. How much value will really come down to the specific buyer, how they utilize the system, how much advantage they took of the system at the time.
The value of the system is really in the eye of the beholder, right? But can you give me an example of when solar played a part in helping the sale happen?
Well, absolutely. So as I stated before, it really comes down to a case-by-case basis. But I can tell you, at least specifically with sales that I've been involved, it has been a positive. In a particular home that we were selling a few months back, the homeowner had installed a quite large air conditioning unit to cool the whole house. As a result of that, running that during peak hours became very expensive. The homeowner sat down, looked at their numbers, and realized that by installing solar, they could really help mitigate those costs significantly. So they went ahead and installed the solar. When it came time to sell, that was key information that I could relay to the buyer, letting them know that this is what the sellers experienced and they could potentially have the same type of effect if they purchased the home. So anyway, as we alluded to a second ago, having solar on the home can definitely be of added value and a benefit in the sale transaction. However, do you ever come across properties or homes where that may not be an option? Possibly the roof is too old, or a situation where simply solar cannot be installed?
There are cases where installing on a particular roof may be difficult, but a lot of times what holds back the installation of sale or deters a homeowner from considering solar is the age of the roof. So you can install solar on just about any roof.
Okay.
I personally don't recommend that you install solar on roofs that are near their end of life.
Okay.
As a homeowner, you'll want to be talking to companies that are going to have your best interest in mind. And what I like to say about DroneQuote is that we help people buy solar, not sell people solar. And what that means is we're not looking to make a sale for the sake of making a sale. We'll advise you as to what the condition of the roof is and whether or not it makes sense to replace the roof at the time that you're installing solar.
So that's a part of the process that you talk about with the homeowner as to condition of the roof and possibly factors that they should take into consideration as they go through the potential installation of solar.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And one of the biggest reasons why we do that is because, like I said, we help people buy. We don't sell solar.
Well, guys, thank you so much for watching. I certainly learned a lot today. Sinue, thank you so much for coming out and sharing your knowledge and expertise in this area with us. Guys, if you're interested in buying or selling a home with or without solar, my name is John Case. I do work for Duomo Realty. I can be reached at area code 858-776-5761. Sir?
Ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned earlier, I'm Sinue Montoya with DroneQuote. And if you're looking to put on a new roof or solar for your property and you want to do it the smart way, the hassle-free way, and the most price competitive way, give us a shout out at DroneQuote.net. You can reach me at smontoya@DroneQuote.net or 760-877-6941. And if you'd be so kind, please find Duomo Realty on social media at
Duomo Realty on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. We're not hard to find, folks.
And at DroneQuote on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on, like you said, we're not hard to find on every social media channel. Give us a like, give us a share, and if you found this video valuable, please share it with others.
Leave a comment. Say hi.